Chapter 16. Stella. Stella had been to more parties in 15 years than she cared to remember. Her father had told her on numerous occasions that her first birthday party was a spectacular affair involving a string quartet, 3 outfit changes, and the largest Victoria sponge cake anyone ever assembled. When she was 5, Dad took her to Paris for her first shopping spree along the Champs-Élysées. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And on the anniversary of her mother's death, when she was 10, her dad had overcompensated and hired the Chipperfield Circus to come and entertain the entire town for what he referred to as Stella Day. Celebrations tend to blur together. The dresses, the food, the introduction to guests, the music. Even if it was one of her father's fashion shows, she had seen so many they became tedious at best, especially when she was usually the youngest guest in the room. Children weren't often invited to black tie events, but Stella didn't consider herself a child. She acted like an adult and was treated as one. That privilege was wondrous, and yet sometimes she longed for company her own age. So perhaps Stella thought, as she languished in a bath after eating a leisurely breakfast of eggs and fruit, having been excused from school today for the gala, this evening's event would be different. She actually knew people coming. Anita, other classmates, Miss Norbert, people from the shelter, and even miserable Cornelius. But the point was, she had her own circle for once. Maybe that meant that tonight's event would actually be enjoyable, even if she had to walk the runway with a cat. She enjoyed being the center of attention. She lived for the limelight. But it was this walking with an animal gimmick that was making her break out in hives. She hadn't thought this through. If she had realized she would have to participate in a dog and cat fashion show just to get out of cleaning dog pens, she wouldn't have suggested the show. Anita had a dog, so she could see why she wouldn't mind. But Stella's father knew how much dogs upset her. And did he really need her to open the show carrying a cat? Couldn't he just be happy she volunteered at the shelter in the first place and let her model without an animal? Okay, maybe she had suggested the show to try to earn some bonus A+ grades that her father so desperately wanted her to get, but she had Anita now to help her with that. And why did her father have to keep pressing this issue of getting a dog, or talk about her grades as if she didn't already have a career lined up? She didn't need a B average at Highbrook when she had a fashion company to run. Why did he care about being in good standing with the board? She wished he'd stop acting as if her spot on the leaderboard mattered to the House of Deville. What had happened to him when they moved to London? Why was he obsessed with investing in a jewelry business and owning Dalmatians all of a sudden? If she had to hear another word about Norman and Belinda, she'd scream. He'd had the nerve to bring up those Dalmatian pups again at dinner the night before. She couldn't believe he named them. Naming something felt personal. Stella decided, even though she pressed her father on that fact. He just said he was tired of referring to them as dog. It's so generic, Stella. They have such personalities. I can't see how someone won't adopt them tomorrow evening. He'd given her a woeful look. Would be wonderful if it was us, don't you think? Stella hadn't answered him. Instead, she'd headed off to bed to get her beauty sleep. But her rest had been fitful. Nightmares of being mauled on the runway awoke her. And then, suddenly, she'd heard a whistle. It was loud. It blew again, and Stella didn't understand where it was coming from. She'd rushed to the window and looked through the curtain to see if it was a lobby or a bobby on the street. But it was the middle of the night, and the street was deserted. The whistle blew again. It sounded like it was in the suite. Stella had gotten up and followed the noise to her father's suite. When she opened his door, she heard the whistle again and barking and let out a scream of fright. "Darling, are you all right?" her father had asked, jumping up. "Did we wake you?" He held up the whistle. "I'm sorry. I was just working with Norman and Belinda. You frightened them." "What are they doing here?" Stella seethed, staring them down through the haze of the light from the open doorway. "The shelter let me bring both here for the night. Since they're the stars of our show and walking with Anita and the Weatherby, I couldn't risk anything happening to them. The hotel said it was fine. The front desk thought the pups were adorable. They're sleeping in my quarters, and we were working on some commands." The whistle on a string hung from his hands. "I'm sorry we woke you." "They're sleeping in your room?" Stella had asked incredulously. Filthy animals sleeping near her father's bed? The idea gave her the willies. "What is with your fascination with these things?" she asked, and Norman bared his teeth. "Stella," her father said, sounding slightly impatient, "they're not things. Dogs are wonderful pets and fierce protectors. We'd be lucky to have these two looking out for us," he said, rubbing both dogs' heads. "You were the one who suggested the pet fashion show. I guess I thought you'd finally gotten over that small incident as a child. It was so long ago. It seems childish to still be afraid of such sweet animals." Stella refused to dignify that with a response. "I'm going back to bed. Do not use that whistle again." "All right," he said, his tone softening as he went to the door and watched her pad away to her own suite. "We won't bother you again. Sleep well, dear." "We." Stella didn't like how her father kept referring to himself and the Dalmatians as if they were a team. She was his team. She and he. The House of Deville. Still, she wouldn't start with him on the morning of the gala, nor did she want to see those beasts, so she had waited until she'd heard them all exit the suite before she left her room. And now she was by herself, and it was sort of lonely. The sound of the ticking clock grew louder. She really did miss having hired help on a day like today. She shook the idea from her head. She just needed to focus on getting ready for the event. All that was left to do was primp. Hair and makeup would be arriving soon. She drummed her fingers on the long, empty dining room table, willing the seconds to tick by till they arrived. Father time was taking too long. What was she supposed to do while she waited? That was when she had an idea. She went to the phone. "Anita?" she said when the girl answered. "Grab your things and come to the Seville. I know it's early, but I thought we could get ready together. I have my own hair and makeup coming from the salon downstairs. They're fabulous. You'll join me and have yours done too." "No, it's no mine. You don't want to be downstairs. Those backstage areas remind me of a cattle call. You'll get no personal attention. No bus." Stella huffed. People who went to the Seville did not take a bus. "I'll have the hotel send a car. Be ready in 15 minutes. Then she hung up and called the front desk. With that settled, she went to her wardrobe to set everything up for the stylist. After she'd gotten out all that she needed, she looked at the clock and realized she still hadn't heard a doorbell. It was 11:45 a.m. Where were they? Why did everything have to be so complicated? Stella marched to the phone again and called down to the front desk. "Good morning, Miss DeVille. How may I help you?" She couldn't be bothered with small talk. "Where are the hair and makeup stylists I scheduled? They were supposed to be here a half hour ago." She heard whispering on the other end. "I'm sorry, Miss DeVille, but I'm afraid we were asked to cancel them." Stella's eyes flashed. "Canceled? By whom?" The person on the other end of the line sounded nervous. "Mr. Hammond." "Bennett?" Stella thundered. Wait till she told her father about this. "Yes, I'm so sorry for the disappointment, but as we explained to both your father and Mr. Hammond, until your account is paid in full, we cannot allow additional charges. I hope you can understand. We are at the Seville we at the Seville enjoy having you as long-term guests, and we want nothing but... Stella slammed down the phone and lifted it again to ask the operator to connect her to the ballroom, where she knew Bennett was preparing for the show. Her hands were shaking. Why was Bennett not paying their bills? I need to speak to Bennett Heyman immediately, she said, trying to control the rage she felt. Bennett came right to the phone. House of DeVille, Bennett Heyman speaking. Bennett, why aren't you paying our hotel bills? She refused to take a breath or let him get a word in. Does my father know about this? You canceled my hair and makeup? When my father finds out, he will have your head. Stella? Bennett's voice sounded strained. Just stay where you are. I'll explain. She waited for him in the sitting area in her dressing robe, angrily contemplating all the ways she would yell at him when he arrived. She never yelled at him before. Bennett had been with her father's company since she was a small girl. He had known her father. He spent more time at their home than the help. She couldn't understand how this had happened or why. Was he stealing money from them when they treated the man like family? Bennett! 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 What if all the changes that had occurred in her life over the last year were his fault? The move to London, the push to bring House of DeVille to the city, selling their house, living in a hotel, making her go to Highbrook School where her grades were on display. Display! This had all been Bennett's doing. Well, Highbrook had been Theodore Radcliffe's idea, but still this school was making her feel inferior, and Stella DeVille was inferior to no one. Stella, said Bennett, walking briskly into the room. I'm so sorry. Before you say anything, I need you to understand what's going on. This must stay between us. Your father is the only other person in the House of DeVille family that knows. He is the House of DeVille. He'd better know what you've been up to, but I doubt it because if he did... Stella kept her voice calm. He wouldn't allow you to ruin our reputation and not pay our bills. So what is really going on here? Are you stealing money? You've been family to us, like an uncle to me. You'll break my father's heart when he hears the cruel truth. How could you not pay our hotel bill? Now they're withholding hair and makeup service. What's next? Denying us room service? The doorbell to her suite rang. She ignored it. Bennett sat down on the chair opposite the couch where she was sitting and stared at her before speaking slowly. Stella, listen to me. Your father is broke. Stella blinked. Then she burst out laughing. You don't expect me to believe that, do you? Bennett looked serious. I'm not joking. Your father hasn't paid his bills in a year. It's why he sold the house, why he got rid of the staff. It's why we came to London to get on the ground floor here and find a factory location that was close by to try to get the company started again. This is also why he sits on the board at the Highbrook School. You get free tuition as a board member's child as long as that child maintains a B average. Her grades. This was why he kept asking about the leaderboard. She was probably in danger of losing her scholarship. Her head was spinning. Stella stood up and felt a drumming start to pulse in her chest. No, this couldn't be true, could it? Why didn't he tell me? He made me swear to secrecy. He didn't want to worry you. Yes, the clothing line is doing well, but do you know what it costs to make each piece in his collection? They're a fortune. We're barely in the black. Barely. And it's not enough to pay off the loans your father took to get House of DeVille off the ground several years ago. Stella's chest tightened. She stood and walked a few feet, then turned and sank back down on the couch before her knees could give out. That's impossible. If we were in need of money, I would have known. Bennett ran a hand through his hair. I wanted him to tell you. But he said we had to keep up appearances. He wanted you to feel secure. That's why we moved into the Seville. I made an arrangement with them that we'd pay a monthly rate instead of a nightly one for the longer residence, and the negotiating helped. I said in exchange for the lower rate, House of Deville would shoot some fashion photos here. And now, of course, we have the gala bringing in people, but my schmoozing goes so far. The hotel bill is out of control with all the room service, the private car fees, the stylist bookings. Stella felt her chest begin to constrict. These were all charges she'd made. The management is growing impatient, and even with all I've done to try to get the books in order, it's not enough. Your father is a brilliant man, but he constantly wants to be bigger, better. He doesn't want anyone to know how we're struggling, and I'm not sure how much longer I can keep tax collectors from swooping in and taking it all. Even that blasted hell hall he wants to renovate so he could take you back to the country on weekends. We're losing hell hall? Sure, the place was a dump compared to their former stately home in their country, but her father loved the place. It had been in his family for generations, and when they sold their home, he told her it was so he could fix up Hell Hall as a weekend retreat. That had apparently been a lie too. They had no money. He'll never give that home up, Bennett said, but something has to change. I had to cancel the charge account at the hotel for anything other than necessities, like food. Not room service. No charging clothing. No hair appointments. You'll both have to take the bus from now on too, till we get this sorted out. The bus? Stella's head was starting to throb. I know it breaks your father's heart to think House of Deville isn't as prosperous as he'd hoped it would be in its first 5 years. But building an empire takes time. We are building a brand that we want to be around for generations. He sighed. I admired your father, but he is an impatient man. He looked at her, his brown eyes pleading. If we could just cut our spending till we right this ship, or... He trailed off, and she couldn't tell what he was thinking. We could get another loan, but that requires collateral, of which we have none at the moment. Collateral? Now that was an interesting word. Yes, something we could put up as a promise of future payment, Bennett exhaled. Your father won't agree to using Hell Hall, so I have to come up with another option. And I might have, but this is not your concern. He smiled uncomfortably. I know his new line will be successful, but we won't see that income for months at best. Suddenly she noticed the dark circles under his eyes, the worried lines in his brow. They made him look a decade older. Can I ask you a favor? Bennett inquired. Could you not reveal to your father that you know the truth till after the show? I need him to be his sharpest tonight, so we can charm London. I fear it would break his heart if he knew that you knew the truth. I won't say anything, Stella promised. Her poor father. How could she help him? There had to be a way out of this mess somehow. Think, Stella, think. Bennett stood up and smoothed his dress coat. Thank you. Tonight has to go well, for all of us. You can still get your hair and makeup done, he said kindly. You'll just have to get it done downstairs with the other people in the show. People. Stella bit her tongue and tasted blood. How is her father going to make enough money to get their empire back? Thank you, Bennett. The next words tasted bitter in her mouth. I'm sorry I was so curt earlier. When she thought of being lonely, she had somehow forgotten that Bennett had been a fixture in her life since childhood. If he was as committed to helping her father and House of Deville as he seemed to be, she could try to be more patient, kinder. He smiled sadly. It's quite all right, Stella. I'll see you downstairs. I have several matters I still have to attend to. She nodded and watched him walk out the way he'd come in. The suite was quiet once more. The chiming grandfather clock, noting the time, was now 12:30 p.m. She sighed. She might as well get dressed and join the other cattle downstairs. If she hurried, she could get in the makeup chair at first. Stella spun around, heading out of her living area and through the entrance hall to get to her bedroom. The hotel's bedroom. She thought, somewhat worriedly, and also somewhat filled with anger. She ran smack into Anita. They both gasped. "I'm so sorry," Anita said, holding a small beauty case in her hand. "I thought you heard me come in. I rang and rang." Stella narrowed her eyes at Anita. Had she overheard the conversation with Bennett? "How long have you been here?" Anita frowned, her brow furrowing. "I just arrived. I'm sorry I let myself in. The door was unlocked." "You just got here? Or you've been standing here eavesdropping?" Anita blinked, confused. "I just arrived. Stella, is everything all right?" Stella felt her breath slow. She looked at Anita. There was no sign of pity. She couldn't tolerate that. She chose to believe Anita, plastering a smile on her face again. "I'm fine, just anxious for the show. Let's head downstairs together." She led the way to the door. "Change of plans. We're now part of the cattle call."